Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Before I go any further, you could please subscribe down below. Great videos going up. As I said now in the last multiple videos, so what we're doing is Moment and I and a few of the other moderators and Rob are going through questions. Well, Rob's asking on his Instagram topics that people want to get covered. I know a lot of people like when I go through exercises in the books and break down how I went by looking at my irrational beliefs and what was really keeping me locked, especially in the cycle of somatic OCD, fear being locked. And we're basically putting those comments and questions into video format to answer the questions that you want to see answered. So the one I have today is directly from Rob. We've covered it before, but today I'm going to cover it in a little bit more depth. And that is 5 tips for basically friends and families for sufferers from the perspective of the sufferer. So Erica's done videos on this from the perspective of the loved one, but this is going to be in the perspective of the sufferer itself. Daisy and Milo are just fighting in my backyard, shredding up the grass as they always do, and Milo sneezing, and so that's what will be going on. So the number one thing I have on the list is educating yourself about OCD and reason. Why do I talk about this? Educating yourself as a friend or a family member about OCD is important for a couple reasons. Well, recovery does need to come from them, and that's the 5th point. We will talk about that. But OCD recovery people are very good at looking and seeking reassurance. Now, that is on them. That's not on you. Even if you give it to them, it's not your fault that you give it to them. You just don't understand OCD more than likely, just like none of us understood OCD before we came across OCD recovery, read the books on the reading list, read other books out there that have validity with OCD, and looked at other forums and channels and stuff like that. So Erica now has a very good grasp on when I am looking for reassurance, which is very rare. I am very good at sitting with discomfort, a lot better than I was 2 years ago. But Erica did have to educate herself on OCD. You know, she didn't have to go crazy, but she has read the books on the reading list, well, most of them, so she could understand about like, okay, well, why is not Nick looking at these perspectives in his life changes and stuff like that. You don't need to read the books on the reading list, but it would be pretty good to understand OCD in the format that I'm saying, so you know, listen. When you have a loved one, like say a daughter or a son who has OCD, you want to reassure them. It's natural human instinct to reassure them, but I promise you're not helping them. So stuff like everything is going to be okay. It might not be okay. It might not be okay for a long time. So that's okay to say that. You're not being a bad parent because there's no such thing as a good or bad person. And, you know, if you're just hearing this for the first time, this is what is broken down through Albert Ellis's teachings. We don't rate humans in their entirety. We rate the actions that we do. We never write out the human. And we talk about agreement versus acceptance, and you might want to watch some of the videos on that too. It's really good stuff. Moman doesn't like when I put my eyes like this. He says I look crazy. But, you know, I drink a lot of coffee and I'm all hyped up. So number 2 is tough love. I talk about tough love with different people in the community if I'm talking to people's family members or, you know, through WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube, one-to-one calls and stuff like that. So tough love was super important for Erica to bring it on me. So tough love is just, you're not, the thing is, when you're watching this, you're like, well, how do I balance tough love and then, you know, letting them do their own thing? There's a fine balance that is almost like an art that you'll need to figure out yourself. But tough love is important. So Erica would come up to me and be like, get out of bed right now. I'd be like, no, just let me sleep a little longer. And, you know, because I just didn't want to experience life. Why would I? I was chronically suffering with no understanding of unconditional self-life and other acceptance. I had really poor frustration tolerance. So she, I think Rob said one time that Hufred, I think it's how you say his name. I always say it wrong. His mother had to basically drag him out of bed. So tough love is really important if you're watching this. And it might be very uncomfortable. One of the biggest problems that people do in life is they shut down emotionally. And this is an avoidance response, and it has no benefit whatsoever. Life is difficult, and life is going to have hard situations. So if you have a loved one, a family member, or a spouse that has OCD, it's not going to be an easy journey. But they can recover. Because look at me. I'm not fully recovered, but look at the progress I've made if you've heard any of my stories and stuff like that. So number 3, self-compassion and self-care for yourself. This is super important. You'll need to take care of yourself on this journey because you're going on the journey with them. Now, it is your decision on whatever you want to do during the journey because the journey comes from them, but you can help in a lot of ways. So, you know, one thing, the way you can help is by basically learning the tools yourself in a way, you know, understanding that if they say crazy shit or act crazy, I'm not saying we like or agree with their actions. Erica did not like my outburst, but she accepted me because I had a disorder. A lot of people say that's an excuse, and they'll play the automatic enabler game. And being an enabler is a hot buzz topic. Like that person's an enabler. And it's not so black and white. We like to pin people as an enabler and then cut them off as a human. That's not how it works. So tough love, a lot of people will be like, oh, you're being a bad person. If you're not tough love, they'll be like, oh, you're being an enabler. Do you know what I mean? So you're always going to have people that are black and white. But showing yourself self-compassion, taking care of your mental health, taking care of your physical health, whether that's going to the gym or meditating or doing mindfulness, whatever you want to do is going to be super important for the journey, because it's going to be lots of ups and downs and lots of moments of stress and stuff like that. And that's important to talk about, because that's the reality of OCD recovery. You're not going to meet someone who, like Erica. If you were to talk to Erica and you said, oh, it's got to be just rainbows, she'd be like, no fucking way. So that's just the reality. Okay, number 4. Oh, we're kind of flying through this video, but, short and sweet sometimes is the way to go. Time and patience. This time and patience is not just important for the sufferer. Time and patience is important for people, family members, loved ones, especially if you're living with a sufferer. OCD recovery takes time. You more than likely might have Googled yourself, how long does it take for someone to recover from OCD? Stop that right now. It's all nonsense and bullshit. If you're listening to someone who's telling you about deadlines, they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to OCD. I would love if there was deadlines, but there's not. Because then all you're going to do is get frustrated and be like, well, what the heck? This person said 6 months. This person said 6 weeks. This person said 1 year. It's just not that clear cut. It's going to take as long as it needs to take. And you are with them in that process if you decide to be. That's important to realize that. You can no longer force recovery as they want to force recovery. This is why unconditional other acceptance will more than likely be one of the most important things you could practice as a friend or family member or stuff like that. It's super important. Okay, the last thing. Recovery comes from them. No matter what I tell you, no matter how much insight I give you, how much anecdotal experience from Erica and I's relationship, Kirsty and her now husband, or Sam and his girlfriend, or anyone else that's in a relationship, Lisette and her husband, and anything like that. I could go on forever. All of those spouses, family members, can only do so much. And they really could do actually little in the grand scheme of things. Because you can show tough love. I'm not saying it's not important. You could show tough love and all these other things. But if the recovery person doesn't want to recover, they're not going to get anywhere. I always talk about rehab facilities. If you have an addictive personality and you have an addiction, a very severe one, you could go to the best detox facility on earth. There are a bunch of them in Delray, Florida, in South Florida, that I have had many friends go to. And they have told me time and time again that it was the biggest waste of $30,000 they ever did, because they knew they weren't ready to recover. That is the reality of what you need to try and accept. So you don't need to force it. It takes time to see these perspectives. Remember, the books on the reading list were not made for us. They were made for just non-sufferers in general, like people that just have irrational beliefs. Getting underneath those irrational beliefs, going towards the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for you could be the person that you're with never recovers. They make progress. Maybe they make no progress. That's a reality. That is, if you work on the stuff, move with unconditional self-life, other acceptance, move with uncertainty, the chances of them not recovering is little, but there always is the uncertain chance that they might not ever recover. That's just part of this whole entire process. And you'll see some people out there talking about not accepting the worst case scenario. So the person that you're with, whether it's a family member, loved one, they're more than likely, if they're sending you these videos and they're latched chronically, are going to have to go towards the worst case scenario. It is part of unconditional life acceptance. So let me give you an example. People will say stuff like, well, going towards the worst case scenario is not unconditional life acceptance. You could die in a car accident tomorrow. That's the worst case scenario. That's unconditional life acceptance. So it's just some people just don't quite understand unconditional self-life and other acceptance. But, the most important part of this video is recovery comes from them. What's the saying go? I've used it today, actually. I was talking with someone. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't force him to drink. That's a cliche statement, but it has validity and truth behind it. Recovery had to come from me. Recovery had to come from Rob. All the other people I work with OCD recovery, all the other people that have recovered, people I'm talking to on the road to recovery, and even in the beginning. Insight gathering, just gathering information is great. It opens the door, but it doesn't push them forward. So you can only do so much. So remember, Educate yourself on OCD so, it can have benefits. You don't need to do anything, but it does benefit the journey for yourself. Tough love, tough love is an art. Not easy for certain people. Not hard for me to give tough love. Self-compassion, very important for yourself. Take care of yourself. It could drive you a little wacko sometimes. I drove Erica a little off the walls, as you can imagine. Time and patience, not just for the sufferer, for you as well. And recovery comes from that. Please show this to your friends and family and have them ask any question they want down below. I'm going to have Erica respond as well. Erica has great anecdotal experience. She had to put me in the mental hospital. She had to call the cops on me 3 times. I don't know, maybe 4 times. Who knows? She was just very concerned about me. She's in Hawaii right now. And look at where I am. Like how far I've come. She's in Hawaii. This is the first time she's left me alone since I've been suffering. So 26 months of when it really latched chronically. And this is the first time she's left me alone. So she's obviously a little nervous. And I told her, you have no control. If something bad happens, that's on me. That's not on you. Easier said than done, but it's important to look at stuff like that. So you have no responsibility for the sufferer in the sense that you might think you do in the recovery process. That comes from them. As much as you want to force them in the recovery, if they don't want to recover, they're not going to recover. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment down below and have a great day and subscribe.